Conscription. That's all I'm hearing about at the moment, guys. And it's not my kids going to be sent to war. It's yours. Well, the reason I say it's yours, guys, is because I don't actually have any kids myself. So one thing I'm really interested in doing is giving you all the information as I see it to help you make the right decisions about what this government is doing and how it's going to place your young'uns in considerable danger. Let's have a look, shall we? Before we do, I just want to kind of bring something up to you here that I think is quite interesting, and that's called the Cloward-Piven strategy. One thing I realized with making these YouTube videos is there's so much information happening all of the time. I'll make a video about that. I'll make a video about something. Before you know it, I haven't made a video for about 2 or 3 weeks, all right? And you're right in the comments below. You're absolutely right to call me out on it, because just to make these videos, to get the feedback and everything is a huge undertaking. I'm not complaining. Cloward-Piven strategy then is a political strategy outlined back in '66 by some sociologist dudes. It's a strategy of forcing political change to societal collapse through orchestrated crises. The strategy seeks to hasten the fall of capitalism by overloading the government bureaucracy with a flood of impossible demands. This is very interesting to me. Amassing massive unpayable national debt, other methods such as infected immigration, thus pushing society into crisis and economic collapse. Why would we want to do that? I don't know. There's some mentalist people around, and most of them are in power or in the senior levels of the British military, it might seem. Let's have a look at conscription then. I think this is quite interesting. This is just one of those things that if you throw words up enough, people get used to them, and then it's like, oh, we're going to get conscripted, are we? And before you know it, you're being shot by Russian howitzers and all sorts of stuff, wondering how you got there. I'm very much contrarian on the Ukraine war. You know how I think about it, guys. I believe that Viktor Yanushchenko was thrown out for the Petro guy back in 2014 in Ukraine. Poroshenko, was it? Petro Poroshenko? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. And I believe it was a CIA coup that overthrew that government to get it as a Western government, obviously, and then everything else snowballed from there, I believe. Obviously, as you know, that Putin has warned us before what would happen if we tried to get Ukraine into NATO. People disagree. I mean, that's absolutely fine. I don't care. Look, soldier exodus eroding Britain's ability to deter a hostile state. So you have to remember from what we just said about that strategy, there are narratives. I want you to think, what are these narratives, Tim? What are these things that we're being told again and again and again to soften us up so we accept the next thing coming? I'm a realist. If you want to know about realist politics, I believe that NATO and things like that don't matter. It's purely about the power of the individual states. That's another thing. I listen to some people that you probably don't listen to. We can talk about later. But look, here we go with soldier exodus. So we are losing people from the British military. 8 people leave the armed forces for every 5 who are recruited. I heard it was like 3 leave for every 1 that comes in. It's unsustainable, guys. We know Capita have Harry shagged pigs it. We know it's not working. It is truly horrendous. And it's all to do with, are we fighting the last war? Are we fighting this war? We know how it is. I get emails from people saying, hey, my son is joining or my daughter's joined the military, but they've been waiting for 18 months. It's just not going to happen. We used to get people in. When I joined, I was in within 3 months. Bang, back in '98, straight into the Navy. This is horrific when you've got guys wanting to join. It's a real struggle to get in at the moment, and I can't believe it's not all planned. You'll criticise me, but it does seem that way to me. And one of the reasons that we have this issue, of course, is that we have a very, well, I'm going to say feminist society we live in. Like, feelings matter more than facts, it seems. People criticise away. That's what the comment section is for. It's come out of the universities back in the 70s. I just don't believe it has a place in our military. One of the things, of course, that was happening with the Royal Air Force, as you know, and I have campaigned against it, and I will put a video up at the end just so you can see what all this is about, was that the Royal Air Force looked to get 40% women and 20% minorities into the Royal Air Force by 2030, something that was completely unsustainable. Let's have a look at that quickly. And if you remember correctly, we had targeted white men for that, and scrolling down here, we'll see that no individual has been named or blamed for trying to implement that policy at all. It was horrific. It was never going to work. And of course, it's something that we should be really, really ashamed of. But of course, we have put down men, especially white men, which are the core demographic of the military, for a very long period of time. And they're not stupid, of course. When you call people toxic for long enough, they actually kind of tend to believe it. I better not go and join the military. I'll do something else. And of course, they're not joining, as we've seen. It's a massive issue for us. And the reason the women aren't joining either, I'll quickly just brief you on now, is for this reason. And Dame Laura Kenny, cyclist, she's just come out and said she's retiring, I believe at the age of 31, for the family reasons. Now, when I was training women to join or fly fast jets, and I am very, fast fast jet centric or aviation centric in what I do here, guys. But she said she really just wants to stay home and look after the family. And it's something I think if more women are honest, they would say, yeah, I just, I've had kids. I don't particularly want to go back into that workplace right now, especially when it is a fast jet or especially when it's in the military. If you had 40% of your military women, what ages do women have kids? Well, quite young. What's the average age of someone in the military? It's about 28. When do women get to the front line in aviation? Around about 30. What age is Laura Kenny? I think, yeah, she's 31, just had her second kid. So you would be hemorrhaging a lot of women then that would have childcare duties. So this was one of the things that they tried to push in. Let's push in minorities and let's put in a whole world of women, and it's not working out for them. I think they realize it's not working out. But then we're going to talk about conscription because it's happening to your children, not mine, guys. I don't have any kids. I've just got some really silly pets. But look, what it's saying here is I love the way that people gaslight on this, drafting work-shy citizens into the armed forces could ease labour crisis. Now, if we go back to the last time we had conscription, it was 1916, and it was during the First World War. And what happened is they conscripted, I think it was about 2.5 million men only into the military to go and fight, obviously, in France in the First World War. And the problem was, I think about 200,000 objected, and it was fine, they did. But that worked because it was a total war, and they all wanted to go. We've had, I think, 1949 until 1963, because it was a year before my father was born, we had a national service, but we haven't had conscription since. Now, they're thinking about putting it back in again because they fucked it in Ukraine. Absolutely, they have. I've talked about it before, guys, and they realise we've got to get people in. It's more serious than you realise. I'm about to go into it now in the next 20 seconds. We're going to have to adopt a Finnish model of national service to deter Vladimir Putin. A lot of people, interestingly enough, cannot hold anything other than two absolutes in their brain. I've learnt this. I've been reading about it. So it's either America good and Russia bad. That's one absolute. America good, Russia bad. That's the absolute that a lot of people can hold in their brain. Hold anything else is very uncomfortable. But the other one people can hold is a very nuanced grey area of, is America good? Is Russia actually that bad? Or is there this kind of sea change of whose orbit and sphere of influence are we actually in right now? Why is America on the border of Russia? What interest does it have on the eastern Ukraine? Why is Ukraine being allowed into? Was it 2014 when they had 7 countries joining NATO? It was something crazy like that. And of course, Putin the whole time was going, what are you doing, guys? What are you doing? What is this about? This is crazy talk. So that kind of stuff happens. If we were doing it in reverse, by the way, if we were putting troops into Canada or Mexico, do you think America with the Monroe Doctrine would deal with that? No, of course they wouldn't deal with that. Absolutely. And if we want to know where the major levels of espionage is coming from, is it coming from Russia or is it coming from the West, shall we say?
There will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
We will put an end to it.
Germany should cancel the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline. We're looking at a variety of things we could do there.
We've been so far trying to use other tools to stop the Nord Stream 2.
This pipeline must be stopped, and the only way to prevent the completion is to use all the tools available to do that.
If Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
Kill Nord Stream 2 now and let it rust beneath the waves of the Baltic.
The operator of the Nord Stream gas pipelines, which run between Russia and Germany, says that 3 lines on the Baltic seabed were damaged on Tuesday.
It was a deliberate act of sabotage, and now the Russians are pumping out disinformation in the line.
So I think you know where I'm coming from when I play that kind of tape. All I'm saying is, guys, that's a massive international terrorism incident that we're not even talking about. Look, so what are we saying then about the Finnish model? Well, Finland says they're going to follow France and they raise possibility of deploying troops to Ukraine. Now, if you're not aware of that, France literally just said that they are preparing a contingent for deployment to Ukraine, initially comprising about 2,000 soldiers. You know, I've talked about this before. These soldiers will be targeted. Think about what that means for a second, because if we want an escalation, well, 2,000 soldiers, we can sacrifice that. Before we know it, France is being targeted by Russia, and NATO country has been, you know I'm going with it, guys. Before you know it, it's Russia versus NATO. And what does Russia have left? Tactical nuclear weapons, strategic nuclear weapons. That's all it is, really. Okay, this is ego, narcissism. This is pathological behavior where people aren't just willing to say, we kind of fucked it over Ukraine. We didn't have to do this the way we did it. We could have de-escalated from going back, I think, to like the late 90s, I think it was. It could have been de-escalated. But hey, you know, what do I know, right? If I was Putin with Russia and I didn't want people on my border, I'd be doing the same thing. I understand it. I think we all can understand that. But you'll get the people that hold these two absolutes of Russia bad, America good, and they will say, well, Ukraine should be able to join NATO. And I'm like, yeah, they should be, mate. But in the fucking real world, you might cause a big war. Of course, Germany's doing the same thing with conscription. I'm going to stop this video now, guys. You know how I feel about it. So it's saying it's going to bring it into schools. Obviously, Finland sending troops, France sending troops. We've got troops out there, although we're not saying anything, of course. By the way, that pipeline, I'm not going to speak out of turn because I don't want to fucking die. But there's only about 3 countries in the world that know how to destroy pipelines. And as a former naval officer, I'm going to shut the fuck up. And here we go. Britain must lead the world in condemning Putin's election. What right do we have? We're nowhere near the Russian sphere of influence. For us to call out Putin's regime, do you know how difficult it must be to run a country like Russia? We're lucky sometimes that we have in there. But here's the thing. I'm called an apologist. All I am is a realist. I'm saying, fuck, were we at war before this? No, of course we weren't. There were tensions, but we weren't at war. And now we are. We're bringing China into Russia's sphere of influence, everything else. I mean, this whole article here is written by a 4-year-old, it seems, but it doesn't matter. We're not going to go into too much detail here. All it is basically is saying, you know, there's problems. We know that this nation has been at the forefront of supporting Ukraine since the beginning of this conflict. There's reasons for that, guys, and we know it's financial. We know BlackRock are in there, Fidelity are in there. Anyone with defense stock understands how much their stock's gone up. I haven't got any, by the way, because I don't like investing in the killing of young men. You've got to be talking out about it, guys, because if you don't, your children will be conscripted. Hit the comments, guys. And if you want to know more about this, then I've got another video about what I believe is subversion in the very senior ranks of our British military. It's called, it's in the British Army now. This just has to stop. The video is going to be up over there. Where the fingers go? Over there, guys. Have a look at it if you want to. Tim Davies, Fast Hit Performance.